Welcome, I'm Tangent369. I want to provide a video for you today about player stalls, something that's coming to us in Phase 2 of Alpha 2, December 20th. This video is going to sum up everything we know to date on player stalls and the role they play in the economy, how they're going to work. And it's not going to be a video where I go on and on postulating about it. Instead, what I've done is gone to the Ashes of Creation wiki, found all the interviews, all the live streams regarding player stalls, and put it all together for you. I will, however, pontificate and dive into these things on live stream at some point where we react to our very own video. But until then, here we go. Player stalls from 2017 till November 2024. Let's go.
To player stalls, you had mentioned them before, where somebody could set up and buy and sell items that potentially while they're idle or AFK they could sell. Will this include functionality for services as well, like repairing or enchanting if you have that? And would the system be open enough that I could, say, sell a casted buff or an application of a potion as well?
The last part's an interesting idea. I think that, we've discussed that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty cool. I don't know if that's the direction we're going to end up going, but it's definitely a pretty neat idea. But yeah, as far as repairs and stuff, as far as enchantment goes, all of that stuff is going to be there as a service that players can offer.
And those stalls exist within the marketplaces of nodes as they develop. You'll have more stalls available. If it's an economic node, there'll be greater versatility to those marketplaces. Players, if they're going to be logging off, they can rent these stalls to either sell items that they want to sell or the services, as we said, and they can do that. Yeah, we definitely have functionality in place for that.
Yep.
And are there any restrictions set up to where they can be? So you mentioned the nodes, but is it town only? Are there special commerce zones? Do you need citizenship? Does it have to be at least 10 yards away from another player stall? And then what? Well, and then let me just add on another tack here, just so because you can say it in the same breath.
For sure.
And what manner of UI or notifications will there be? Like, will there be a stall physically there with like a sign where a person like wrote a sentence, or is it a searchable interface element, or?
That's a good question. Okay, so first of all, there'll be a number of stalls equal to the development of the node. They'll be within a marketplace setting, so all the stalls will kind of be together. There will be a user interface that players can access, which is going to be like a town center billboard that kind of lists the current items available within the stalls, and potentially even, depending on what type of node it is, could reflect the position of items in certain stalls in other nodes as well, if they're connected by an economic region, maybe a metropolis or something. It doesn't let you purchase from that UI. Instead, it gives you the location of the stall on a mini map, and you can go then to that stall and purchase that item or whatever service you're trying to find. So yeah, there's functionality there on a user interface platform for players not to have to visit every single stall and find out, what does this guy got? What does this guy got? What does this guy got?
That's fun for the first 5 minutes, and then it gets really boring.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, we wanted to make it easy, but we also want to make it social. So that's why we're going in that direction.
Right.
Can I customize my player stall?
That is not something we've talked about.
What do you mean by customize?
Like, hey, I'm going to put up like this cool doll that I did, or maybe kit out.
You mean from an aesthetic standpoint?
Like one of those armor stand things. Put that stuff out there.
We could definitely. Me personally, the way I viewed it when we do the stall setup from a visual standpoint is like you'll have classes of items. And if you have listed that class of item, you'll have a generic aesthetic that appears on the bench of the stall. So like if you're listing potions, you'll have some potions appear.
Right.
If you're listing fabric, you'll have fabric in the background. Something along those lines where the stall is representative visually of what is listed on the items based on the classification of those items. Right. If you're able to sell from a stall, I don't know who this is from. If you're able to sell from a stall, could you still be PvP'd or robbed? So you won't be attacked within the city limits when you have a stall up. So I wouldn't be concerned about that. In regards to robbing, no.
Yeah, no, you're not going to knock
items
down shops. I don't know what will happen in a siege, though.
Well, in a siege,
we'll have to approach that question later.
Right. It would be likely that those items would be, during the siege declaration period, so the period minimum 3 days, village is 3 days or whatever, that stall would not be renewed, right? Because all services are frozen during the declaration. So they would just be granted back to the user probably. But yeah, we'll discuss it.
It's going to be so interesting.
Additionally, player stalls. In an economic node, there is an area of space that's present near the unique building where players may put up a stall. Excuse me, they'll be able to put up a shop.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, there will be rentable stalls that are capable of being utilized for a period of time based on your expenditure. That will, you'll be able to list any number of goods there for a period of time. There will be an attendant that gets assigned to the stall, and that stall's goods will be listed on a bulletin board that players can access from anywhere in the region and know where the stall's located to travel there and purchase. When the economic node reaches, I believe it's a metropolis stage, it will sell personal shop certificates. Now this allows players, non-citizens and citizens alike, to go to the metropolis. They can purchase the player shop certificates, and they can put up a player shop anywhere in the world with that certificate. They don't have to be near the economic node's unique building and in a designated shop area. Instead, they can go out in the real world and put up a shop if they wish.
Somewhere in your inn, perhaps,
yes.
or maybe if you're running, a little shop on the crossroads on your freehold, you can put it there. But yeah.
All right. We had a conversation on the Discord that caused more confusion than clarity. And it was stalls, shops, markets, and marketplaces. Everybody's clear on shops now, but people wanted to know if all nodes have player stalls. So do all nodes have a way for players to sell goods?
Yeah. So all nodes do have the ability to spawn player stalls. If you're not an economic node and you don't have a market that's essentially your unique building, then you can construct essentially what is, I guess, would be called a auction house, a marketplace. And that marketplace will then come with certain services, and it will come with a certain number of stalls. The economic node, as I recall, has the ability to construct an auction house, and the auction house serves through the economic means the ability to list and sell items, and that comes with additional stalls as well for the players.
So just because Lex and I, we were trying to clean this up. Economic nodes get the unique building that starts at market. Non-economic nodes have a mayoral building called the marketplace.
Correct. Yeah, that would be right. So the marketplace, I think, comes online at stage 4, which is essentially, when you say mayoral building, it's essentially a constructible. We call them constructibles, right?
So the correct term for the mayoral buildings is constructibles?
Yeah, sorry. Those are, yeah. So essentially, these are buildings that the mayor has agency over determining whether or not they should be a constructed project. So these constructible buildings can be selected at open plots that are gained as the node advances. If they elect to begin construction of one of these types of buildings, one of which is the marketplace, it'll grant certain trade benefits as well as some stalls that the citizens may participate in.
About player sales and auctions, will there be any way for players to search for items before they travel to a specific node, or will players be restricted to shouting advertisements in node towns? My perspective comes from Star Wars Galaxies and EVE Online. Both games had mechanisms for discovering that an item is sold at a location prior to traveling there, so you don't waste your time, kind of.
Sure. So real quick on that front, there's a lot of components to that question. It touches a lot of different things. But on the auction house front, economic nodes will have access to auction house that are local to those nodes. And as a node progresses and begins to vassal other nodes, if the parent node is economic, it will have the ability to connect with those vassal nodes that are under its zone of influence, and it will be able to share the auction house in that regard, especially at the metropolis stage. Additionally, from a player stall or shop standpoint, if you're in an economic node, there will be certificates that you can purchase from the economic node main building that will provide the license, essentially the business license, to sit down and put up a player owned shop wherever you're at in the world. But you have to have the license that you purchase from the economic nodes. And then additionally, each node has the availability to either build a market, or economic nodes are by default have player-owned stalls or rented stalls. Sorry, these stalls you can put in either services for recipes that you have access to that players can come and interface with and utilize, and you can charge a fee for it, or you can list items for sale within the stall. Now, all of those stalls and the auction house's listings are capable of being observed so that you know where to go to get certain things on a community board, essentially, where you can access the town center's community board, and it will show you the location and items that you can search through, and then you'll have to travel to that location if you don't have access to either an integrated auction house hub or the stall is not present in that location.
Yeah, we actually have an article about economic nodes. A lot of the stuff that Stephen talked about is in there, and it even goes into more detail. So if you want to go check that out, it's on our news page, ashesofcreation.com/news. You can find it through the node series, which is called Economic Nodes. So you should be able to find it pretty easily. Here is from Reasonable Mayhem about sieges. It says, will items offered in personal shops, player stalls, and auction houses, besides raw and processed goods, or will items such as gear and consumables, be at risk from a node siege? So if you have a little personal shop or a player stall up, or auction house items up, will those be at risk if a node is sieged?
So the way that the stall works differently from the player shop, right? And there's two ideas here. The stall is a rentable space that does not require the player to be present in order to have the items actively available for purchase by other players. They just rent the stall, and NPC there services the stall with what you've decided to link as either a service or an item to sell, and that exists for a period of time, and you pay for that period of time. And then you can leave and you can play. A player shop is where you have a certificate to essentially create a shop with your character, and a little billboard will pop up above you as you kind of sit down for that shop and kind of advertise a custom message that you want to use, that you want to say, and that has to sell things and or services that are on your person. So players can then come up to you and they can interact with you, and they can, so you're kind of you reside yourself to that shop. With regards to sieges, in the stall scenario, you can link the stall to your warehouse. So it doesn't just have to be in your inventory for the stall. The stall can actually be linked to items in your warehouse, and those items could include materials. Now, materials are at risk during a castle siege. During a
Node siege.
During a node siege, thank you. So it is possible, I guess, in that sense, that you could lose a portion of those items. So you don't lose whole items in node sieges. All your warehouse contents aren't vulnerable for node sieges. However, materials are. And materials are either processed processed gatherables or raw gatherables, right? Those are the materials. And the same could be true and said for the player shops. If you get killed while being a shop, you would then have the normal death penalty, which could include a portion of your materials and or gatherables that are on your character.
Yeah, and we've answered the secondary part of that before in regards to materials and being lost.
And it's important to note, by the way, and this is, again, this will be tested, but in a node siege, when the declaration occurs, material goods within the warehouse of the node that has had a declaration made, those are restricted from movement. You can sell them to players through the stall, but you cannot incorporate the warehouse connection with materials into launching a caravan out of the node during the declaration period. So it's essentially like all trade kind of comes to a little bit of a halt there, and there's a risk associated with it.
If everything that I have read is true, stating that auction houses, markets, player stalls are all exclusively economic node buildings, then what does trade look like in the other three node types?
I see. Okay, so
first we have to vet the supposition. Not all nodes are absent of markets. All nodes by default have a market building. Auction houses, as you described, are present within the economic nodes. So that is a true distinction. However, the market buildings do provide player stalls. So those are also not delegated just to economic nodes. Within the vicinity of the market, and depending on the upgrades you choose and the level of your node, you will have additional stalls that are available. So players can utilize those in non-economic nodes. In addition, you can also use player shops, which require certificates in order to use. But once you have a certificate, you can then place your player shop within the vicinity of a node's market, any node's market. So basically what that means is you'll take that certificate and your character will sit down in place, and they will spawn a UI billboard above them where you get to make a brief advertisement of what your shop is. And any player can come up to you and they can interact with your character and see your shop that you have listed goods for and make purchases as if you were a vendor from your shop. So that's the difference between player stalls and the player shop system. The benefit that economic nodes markets have over non-economic node markets is that their player shop certificates, when sold from a metropolis economic node, I believe, can be placed anywhere in the world, independent of market proximity. So you could be at a dungeon and set up your player shop there, and it's like, hey, you want to buy some health pots? You can grab your health pots, and you could, set up there. So yeah.
Very cool. Thank you. That actually answers quite a bit.
Player stall. You can make some money.
Yes. So I noticed there's a lot of commentary about copper. A lot of people saying, we need copper, we need more copper, we need more copper. Well, according to the data, there is a lot of copper being mined. However, the copper and other rare resources are difficult to trade. And one of the key components of a functional economy is the ability to trade and not having that predicated just on chat. So player stalls, we prioritize to make it in by the 20th. These will be in a functional state to begin with. There will be an NPC within the market area that you will be able to list your goods at, and other players will be able to interact with that NPC, take a look at the different player shops that are listed, and make purchases at those locations. So this is something that I think is very necessary. It's not quite an auction house, and the reason it's not an auction house is because you basically have a little bit of a storefront. You go through this list of other players' stores, and you can click into that store, and you can see a number of different items that they have, and you can make transactional purchases on a buy order basis for what they've listed.
Sorry, I had to show Steven's emoting. He even though he wasn't on screen, he was.
This helps to. I'm buying your things.